Okay, so we are back for another Majestic Motherhood episode, and this journey is on surrogacy, vessels of hope, and the gift of carrying life. And I have with me none other than Tiffany Wells. As you see, some, including myself, affectionately refer to her as Coach T, and Coaching with T Wells is where you can find her. But I am so excited about this podcast in particular because this is a topic that is seldomly discussed. And it is such a blessing when you really get to find out everything that there is to know about it. And so I, again, have with me none other than Tiffany Wells. And Tiffany happens to be a three-time surrogate. And
Yeah.
her story and her testimony is amazing. And so, Tiffany, before I get into all of my questions, can you share just a little bit about yourself?
Well, I am a, first of all, I am a Jesus lover. That's how I like to refer to myself. I am a wife, a mother of two boys. So I am a boy mom. I
Mhm.
am also a life, health, and wellness coach. And I am also a certified financial social worker and a
Wow.
lactation counselor. And
Okay.
that's just on the side. Full time, I am a program manager in education. This makes 22 years for me in education.
Wow. Okay. Yeah. And I saw that master's degree. I said, okay, master's. Listen, we love an education. So, but again, I'm just so excited. Um, and I know this is just, I don't know, like an icebreaker. Can you tell us something interesting about you that most people may not know?
So you can see that I'm in pink. My favorite color is blue, but you can see I'm in pink. Nails are done and lip gloss is on, but I actually love working on cars.
Oh, really?
I love I love modifying a car. If I buy a car off the lot, give me a couple of months, it will not look factory anymore.
Really?
Yes, I love
Now,
it.
how is it that, okay, well, that was the question.
Perks of being a boy mom, I guess. I love sports and
Okay.
I love cars.
Well, I've never known that about you. So yeah, like I started to say, this episode is on surrogacy, and the title of Vessels of Hope, and the gift of carrying life, I just thought was so important, because you know, I think that there's definitely a lot of misconceptions out there about surrogacy.
Mhm.
There's a lot of questions. And I think that it's just, again, it's not something that, you hear about all the time. And unless you kind of go down that path or have friends who have explored it, who have explored that path, then it's really hard to really grasp it sometimes.
Mhm.
So, what I want to ask you is, can you take me back to the beginning? What made you, and oh, well, before we do that, what is a surrogate? Just in case. I don't want to assume that everybody knows. What is a surrogate? Can you tell us?
So, a surrogate, or also known as a gestational carrier, is someone who offers to carry a baby for a couple or an individual who may have struggled with fertility or have some other factors that have caused them not to be able to carry a child and have a child themselves.
Okay. That sounds pretty textbook. So, surrogate, you're having a baby for someone else. And one
Yes.
of the things that I researched was that a lot of people don't realize that typically there's some reasons behind it. It
Hmm.
could be medical, it could be genetic, and it
Hmm.
could also just be a personal choice. So
Yes.
those are some things that I think about, like, wow, when I wanted to look into what we were going to be discussing, so that some of the questions that may I have had. And even, I don't know if I told you, but like, I recently sat down with some very successful friends, and it was amazing. And the topic of conversation was surrogacy. Not the entire conversation, but a nice portion of it.
Mhm.
And you and I had been talking for several weeks, and we were trying to put this together. And I thought, well, we've got to do this
Do this,
because,
yeah.
yeah, like I said, I was sitting with some very successful sisters, some friends, and that was one of the and I was sitting with some successful friends, and that was one of the topics that came up, you know.
Mhm.
And so, but it was interesting to me to learn that medical, it could be because a doctor has stated, for
Yeah.
whatever reason, you know, a woman is not able to carry.
Mhm.
I also researched and learned, this was interesting to me, that there are a large number of women who may not have been born with a uterus,
Yeah.
which was new to me. I didn't know that. And so that was something that I thought was very interesting, that you know, and everything else works. You
Mhm.
know, everything else works to have a baby. It's just the actual to carry it they don't have. And so there may be some other genetic issues or things that could maybe bring something out, if the mother is dealing with something potentially health related. And
Mhm.
then we also know, and I think that we've all seen on TV, where women just, you know what, I don't want to lose my Coca-Cola, I've
Mhm.
got the money. And Kim Kardashian,
Yeah.
you know, and there's probably a few others that just said, and I think her sister too, right,
Yeah,
Chloe,
they did. Yeah.
have just decided you have the baby, you know.
Mhm.
And so which, you know, it's their choice, and who knows, maybe they did have something medical that they just didn't want to disclose. You
Right.
never know. But I think that that's something to consider. I know I had a girlfriend, and I don't want to go too much into it, but I know that she was struggling with cancer,
Mhm.
and that was definitely an option for her. And so I think that when people begin to understand, now that we're talking about it, if it's a new topic to them, that it's not something vain, and it's not something
Mhm.
that's nasty,
Right.
but it's something that's beautiful. So
Yeah.
back to what I initially asked you, what made you consider becoming a surrogate?
So my journey in considering being a surrogate actually goes back probably almost a little over a decade now. I had we're still very close friends now. Her mother refers to us as sisters, but an extremely close friend we met through work. And I had just had my youngest son. Her and her husband had hit their 5th year of marriage, and they wanted to start trying to have a baby.
You
And they,
said 50th?
5th year,
Oh,
their
fifth.
fifth
Okay.
year, yeah.
Okay.
And they purposely waited a few years just to enjoy themselves.
Mhm.
And when they started, things were not working out the way they initially thought it would. They went in, followed all the steps, had testing, and realized, hey, there is something going on with your eggs. Initially, they thought it was just a quantity. I offered to carry for her at that time because I knew for us, our family was complete with our 2 boys. And ultimately, her husband was called to go to Florida, and they decided to have some further testing done down there before they entertained surrogacy. And then they realized at this point, it's not just the quantity of the eggs, it's also the quality. They
Mhm.
knew then they're weighing the option of, do we adopt eggs, or do we adopt in general, or do we do surrogacy? Because either, and for them, it was all or nothing. So
Mhm.
they decided, we're just going to adopt,
Okay.
because if we can't have both of us as parents, then we'll just adopt.
Mhm.
The day that their daughter's adoption was finalized was the day that I applied to be a surrogate, because I knew that this was something I had been called to do. I still felt strongly, there was more of a sense of an urgency to do it at that point than it was when I initially offered to carry for her.
Mhm.
And I applied that same day. It was approved within a few, I would say maybe 48 hours.
Wow.
And the rest is history. But it all started with a very close friend. Her daughter is now 7 years old,
Wow.
and they are just a beautiful family. And
Mhm.
my husband and I adore them.
Mm.
And
That's,
and she actually had the opportunity to meet the mom that I carried for. So that was able to just be a full circle moment
I
once
love
our journey
that.
was complete.
Yeah, I love that. I think that's awesome. And speaking of like first of all, I know you know there's a couple scriptures that come to mind to me. The first one talks about there's no greater love than this, that a man would lay down his life for a friend. And of course,
Yes.
it's referencing our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ. But I think about that like, wow. The other one that also came into mind for me was, for you did not receive the spirit of slavery to fall back into fear, but you have received the spirit of adoption as sons, whom we cry, Abba, Father.
Mhm.
And then, and the reason why I'm saying this is because I think that when you think of surrogacy, right, and I love how you said they had the choice to either adopt a child or adopt eggs, which
Mhm.
a lot of people, myself, don't know anything about. Like I'd never heard anything. I mean, I knew about adoption. Um, yeah, I knew about adoption, but I had no idea about the process. And I mean, I think even at some point years ago, and who knows, God willing, I'd
Mhm.
be willing to do that. Like just because that there's children out there. But then adopt eggs, I have never heard about that. So that's something that I think also would be a blessing to people. But I want to read this poem to you that I thought was so beautiful and it stuck out to me. Um, Maybe I should put my little glasses back on. Okay. It says surrogacy is a covenant of carrying, a borrowed vessel of love where hope takes root. It is one heart choosing to hold what another heart longs for, a quiet generosity that weaves biology and devotion together. It is the body becoming both cradle and bridge, the womb as a sacred passage where life is ushered from longing into light. Two families meet there, one offering space, the other offering dreams, and together they write a story larger than themselves. Surrogacy is love disguised as sacrifice, a sacrifice revealed as love. It is the art of saying, let me hold this for you until it is yours. And I thought that that was so beautiful. And because, like I said, I had already talked about those scriptures about like the sacrifice that you make. And I know that we have like, because I know for me, it just seems like at first it was so odd or awkward. But then I think about like Rachel and Bilhah in the Bible, and I think about um Hagar and Sarah.
Mhm.
And I think about there has been like incidents in the Bible where other women carried. And
Yes.
and you want to know what's, and now somebody might say you're reaching here, but Mary actually carried our Lord and Savior. She
Exactly.
was a surrogate.
Exactly.
And so I mean, yes, it was her, in a sense, I mean, he stayed with her, but not for a very long time.
Right.
So and again, I'm not trying to be deep, but I just think that it is beautiful, especially, you know, under the circumstances. And I think the other thing too that came up in my conversation, and I don't want to hop all over the place, but these are just some interesting points to me, is
Mhm.
that like a lot of people don't realize that even with IVF, it's like a 50% chance. It's
Right.
still 50-50. People just think IVF and they think, oh, that's the end all be all. No, even with IVF, there you still have to have faith if you're a faith person,
Yes.
because people can pay their money, spend their money, do
And
all
it
of the things
worked.
that they need, and it doesn't work.
Yep.
So you need to know, and for me, like I firmly believe in doctors the same way someone believes that they can go to a doctor for their kidneys, or they can put themselves on the transplant list, or whatever they need to do, because faith without works is dead.
Yeah.
Yes, you pray and you believe. I do believe God is a healer, but I also believe that God gave us doctors.
He gave us
And
resources
and
with
until
gifts and talents. Yes.
and I think that you need to use discernment and pray wisely, and so
Mhm.
that you know which path may be best for you, and not just be so deep where you say, what's that?
Yeah.
Because in your beginning journey you don't have to tell all the details, but I remember you had a negative experience where someone really freaked out about what you were doing. Could you tell us a little bit about that experience?
So we laugh at it now, but my best friend's grandmother was very curious about this very large bump that I had in front of me. And she kindly asked her granddaughter, "So she's having a baby?" And my best
Mhm.
friend said, "Yeah, she's pregnant for another couple. She's their surrogate." She looked at her and she said, "Ugh." She said, "That's nasty." This woman in her senior age thought that somehow or another I may have been pregnant with another woman's husband, a
Oh,
husband's child.
oh, okay.
And so in her mind, she just couldn't fathom that this was a baby that was developed in a science lab. It was the parents' genetics, and I was just nurturing this baby and going to give it back to them. Her mind went completely left, and it was never.
I know, and you know what? And I don't blame her, because if you don't understand like the concept, and especially depending on your background, you
Yeah.
know, I think, and I didn't have enough time to go into the research, so I'm going to be throwing some statistics around. But I know that there was a recent report that said now more than ever, women over 40 are having more babies. African American women over
Mhm.
40 have reversed, where they're having more babies than
And
teenagers.
teenagers,
And
yes.
so a lot of people don't know that this phenomena used to be something. I don't even know if it's a phenomena, but because really it was very sad. But in my opinion,
Mhm.
okay, I understand people make the best and they turn lemons into lemonade. A lot
Mhm.
of our family members have done it. However, there was an epidemic. I don't know if that's the right word either.
I think
Charge
so.
it to my,
Yeah.
okay, where there were young women getting pregnant, teenagers, before they could finish high school. And
Mhm.
we're not talking like back in the 1950s or 40s or 30s, or I don't know, even
I
60s. I'm
no,
not
I
sure.
saw that in my generation. So yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So this is something that, was a big deal. And just recently, within the last month, these new
Mhm.
statistics and polls have come out saying, wow, there's been a reverse in this trend where women are getting to wait. They're getting to travel with their husbands and live and experience marriage and getting to know them. They're getting to set goals, 5 year plans, and they're
Mhm.
getting to build up their monies. And you get what I'm saying? They're
Yeah.
getting to further their careers and their education. Or they're just choosing to wait. Maybe it's taking longer for them to. So this is what's happening now. And even with this, I feel like, one of the things that I've been, really, really insistent on sharing with people is go get yourself checked out, especially once again in the body of Christ.
Yes.
Now, because what I noticed is, and this is in Christendom, period, right? I don't know the difference between what demographic of church, but I know that in most churches, you're going to see more single women
Mhm.
or singles than you are married families.
Right.
Okay. I don't know the statistic off the top of my head, but look it up. It's
Yeah.
there. And so now what I notice is you have a lot of women who are sitting there and they're serving the Lord. They're loving the Lord. I know I am and was one of them.
Mhm.
I have lots of friends. Oh, I've been celibate 7 years, 10 years,
Mhm.
like I've got friends who are beautiful, successful, love the Lord, and they're just like,
But single.
hmm, any day now, and so in the meantime, we're not being told about biological clock. Why? It was never a thing for us. For since enslavement,
Mhm.
black women, by and large, had been forced to have children when and before they wanted to. And
Right.
then after that, it was just like a lack of knowledge or understanding, lack of protection or access to.
Mhm.
So there were so many different things to where the one thing. And I noticed Carrie Bryant, now Carrie Turner, she's married to Jamal Bryant. The
Mhm.
other day, I don't know if you saw this, but she had a snippet. I didn't watch the whole thing, but it was a snippet that came on where she was just like, stop asking. She was basically saying that when she was young, her mom told her it would just be like, go to school, like, don't get pregnant. And I was laughing. I was thinking my mom was the same way. She
That's
had
what you
five
hear.
five girls, like,
Yeah.
you know. And so if you're being told and scared, don't get pregnant, like that's don't let down your family,
Mhm.
like don't, like that's all you're being told when you are of childbearing age, then basically, and I'm paraphrasing it, you never know why people aren't having children or why
Right.
they didn't, because you don't
Right.
know what their struggles are. And so that happens also in our community. So
A lot.
that being said, I've been very, very intentional about telling young women, while you're sitting up celibate in the house of the Lord, learning about all of these different things, the fruit of the Spirit, you're learning about how to be a keeper and builder of your home, you're
Mhm.
learning about serving, and you're learning about, grace and all these wonderful things. Make sure you're learning about yourself.
Yes.
Make sure that you go to the doctor. Just because you're celibate doesn't mean you shouldn't have an OBG
Yes.
appointment. Go get yourself checked out, because when your Boaz does come, you want to be Ruth ready,
No, you're
right?
ready.
You want to
Yes.
be ready. And what if he's younger than you? You know, I
Yeah.
mean, but what if, And so women are having children younger, I mean, older now. Women are looking younger, older.
Mhm.
So I just feel like there needs to be more education about that, because the dream is still there and God loves family. And he said that you could be fruitful and multiply, but I think that without having that other piece, go check yourself out. Go check out what your AMH is. If
Mhm.
freezing your eggs is an option, go and do it.
Mhm.
Why not? you
Yeah.
can you can store up for later, just like Joseph stored up for the 7 years. You can
Exactly.
store up for later. You can
Exactly.
use wisdom, because other women in other cultures are doing it. At one point, we didn't have the information or the resources or the
The
money to
information or
even
the
look into
access.
this,
Yeah.
or the access, but now
Mhm.
we do. So I tell women, go get yourself checked out while you're climbing this sixth ladder to success.
Right.
So anywho, I know I'm going on and on, but this is just so important,
Good stuff.
and having this conversation with women the other day, I would not want to mention any details, because I just wouldn't. But
Yeah.
I know that this happens, and I've had not just that conversation, but several, in several different circumstances, where people are in the same circumstance. I have another friend who is a attorney, very well, very, I mean, awesome attorney, and she's married,
Mhm.
and she's experiencing some challenges now because, you know, she did not know, and
Yeah.
she didn't know, she didn't look into it, and now that she's ready, there's an issue. So I think that, when you think about surrogacy, a lot of these issues with women, and I know in particular, we have friends and different people in common.
Mhm.
When I think about the beginning of your story, I also want to ask you about when you decided to move forward and you said, you know what, I'm still going to pursue this, even though they've chosen to adopt. God, I know you told me, and I know you are, you know, you're a believer. You know what I
Yes.
mean? I know you're Holy Ghost filled.
Yes.
You hear from
Indeed.
God. And you heard to move forward. What was that like? What did he share with you? And then how was that confirmed? Because I want to hear this.
So for me, going into it, I knew, like I said, that if I wasn't going to do it for this friend, that it was going to be for someone else.
Okay.
I knew that. I applied. And when I tell you everything was smooth, all of the hiccups that I thought that I would encounter, things that I read online that people say they experienced, I experienced none of that. Getting to know and develop a relationship with the family that I was matched with through an agency. We did go through an agency. Things started off kind of slow. I didn't know too much about them, but what I knew from the very beginning, the moment that we met in person, which was the night before our transfer, was that they had lost hope. I did know that because they shared it with me, and so I'm going into a situation where I have hope and I have faith that I was sent here and that I'm matched with these people intentionally. Um, and that just let me know I had a peace about that, even though the conversation with me that night was, if this doesn't work, it's okay, we can try again. And I'm thinking in my mind, why wouldn't this work? Why wouldn't this work? Because I know who sent me. And I was confident in him, not in myself, but in him. I know who sent me. So fast forward a year later, we have this baby and they're getting ready to head home. It's the night before they're heading home.
Mm-hmm.
And I decided at that point, I knew where they were. And so I pretty much kept God and everything out of it. As far as our conversations, I kept it out of it until that night. And I poured out that night and I told them, I said, I never shared this with you because I didn't want to make you uncomfortable or anything. I said, but I know that we were placed together on purpose, that this was a divine connection from God, and that this child that has been birthed was your blessing, what you've been hoping and praying for this whole time, what you gave up hope on, that this is the baby that you were praying for. And they kind of let me know at that point that they lost hope. They didn't have any. But because this baby had been born, that helped restore it. So that's how I know I know it was nobody but God.
And I remember that story because, like I said, we have people in common, and I was told the same thing. I was actually told that by one of our friends that the situation was I had stopped believing. I was wondering if there was a God.
Mm-hmm.
This is what she told me.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, are you real? And your obedience, your sacrifice was the encounter that she had to let her know, yes,
God is real. He heard you.
and so yes, and she just started crying. And so that for me, because I'm hearing from both sides,
Mm-hmm.
so it was just amazing to me, and I love that, and let me ask you, were you nervous on the first journey? Because I know it's just like some people look at it like, oh, you're about to be wobbling around, and so were you nervous? How did you feel? Was it natural?
One thing I can say about me, I love being pregnant. Clearly, because I've done it a lot.
Me
I,
too.
I love being pregnant, so
Okay.
I did not have any concerns there.
Okay.
It is a heavy weight, and I will be honest, it is a heavy weight knowing
Okay.
that someone's all the desire that they have
Mm-hmm.
is riding on whether this is going to work or not. They feel like
Wow.
they have everything else, but the missing piece to the puzzle, which was a gift that was given to me by
Mhm.
our mutual friend. Um,
Yeah.
I have a gift that was given to me by her that says, "You're the missing piece to the puzzle." But the missing piece to their life puzzle is this child, and so it's a
Wow.
heavy weight knowing that everything is riding on that, and not only the outcome, but the pregnancy itself, because
Mm.
pregnancy is taxing on the body. And it's a huge responsibility to not only take care of yourself, but to
Yeah.
grow this child and grow this child well so that they're
Wow.
ready to give back to the parents. So
That is amazing, Tiffany. I just want to hug you right now. Like, can we air hug? You are so beautiful. Like,
thank you.
you just have like know but like, do you understand what kind of like girl? We need more people like you.
We
Seriously.
do. We
We
do. We need more
oh,
love.
you agree?
We need more
We
love in the
we
world.
need more love in the world. But like that is so beautiful. Um, so now we have this, and I know that when it came to it for me and one of our mutual friends,
Mhm.
I remember like, there was like not really a lot of excitement or whatever. And
Yeah.
because it was just like so surreal, I know that, and even when you go into like the lack of hope, and we talked about medical things, some people like lose hope because they have so many miscarriages, right? And one of the things that I was talking to the young ladies about the other day was how what I learned And what I learned was that people have miscarriages is, and I know doctors would probably be like, but I'm paraphrasing, I'm not a doctor, but miscarriages are a form of natural selection, so to speak,
Yes.
where like the baby, if the chromosomes are not exactly what they need to be or abnormal, then the
Mhm.
body's way of, I don't want to say protecting you,
Rejecting. Yeah,
but
it's protecting the
is
mom by rejecting
rejecting.
the, yeah.
Yes. So a lot of time people think that, they blame themselves or they get upset. And I'm not, but like that is the body's way of, I don't, I, that's all I know is that
Yeah.
scientifically, if the chromosomes are abnormal, or if, like, let's say, what is it, 20, what is it? It's like, it's a certain amount for each. What is it? 23
Uh,
chromosome. Yeah, 23 and
yeah.
23, right? Whatever the amount is, let's say only 23 came from the dad and then 19 came from the mom. Like it's supposed to be the same amount. So if there's going to be something there that where this is not going to develop into a normal or healthy embryo or baby, then
Mhm.
the body's way of rejecting it is through miscarriage.
Yeah.
And the reason why I say that is because for me, now for someone else, they could care less,
Mhm.
but for me, it and not and by the grace of God, I'm thankful that I've never had a miscarriage. But knowing that, going into trying to get pregnant, it did make it feel like it was easier for me. I don't know why, but
So,
when I had this conversation with those young ladies, they were like, "Oh," like it was like a light came on for them too. And I don't know why, but I think it made me feel like, well, then maybe, like, okay, well then maybe that wasn't supposed to happen. Or so I don't, like I said, it's a sensitive topic, and I know that's not the case for everyone who's had that experience. I have family members who've had that experience, but I'm just saying, like, people are nervous and scared, and they don't realize that, like, this is why having a relationship and doing that research is important, because it prepares you. But what were you going to say?
so me and my husband experienced a miscarriage before my
Mhm.
youngest son. It was
Mm.
actually with multiples. I had three sacs. S-
Wow.
Baby C never developed, so that sac was empty. B developed a fetal pole, but it never developed a heartbeat. So when I discovered that I was pregnant with triplets, I was actually miscarrying. And then baby A developed a heartbeat, but it was very faint because of the stress and strain from me losing the other two. So eventually I did end up fully miscarrying between 8 to 10 weeks. It was a very slow process because I miscarried separately for each. So going into surrogacy, I knew all about the heartache for miscarriage. But you're thinking, okay, I'm going into this, I'm doing IVF,
Mm-hmm.
this has to work. Well,
Mm-hmm.
everything worked just fine on the first journey. I go
Mm-hmm.
into my second journey thinking, this is gonna, I just did it. I just
Mm-hmm.
did it 9 months ago. I'm good to go.
Mm-hmm.
Having all this confidence. Now this confidence is more myself, which is where I went wrong. That's where I made my mistake. But I had this
Mm.
confidence and I wasn't nervous at all. And the transfer failed. And
Mm.
that's not something that they really prepare you for in surrogacy. They
That's
really don't. They don't
that's
prepare you
good
for
to know.
miscarriage and they do not prepare you for a failed transfer. They don't tell you how high the statistics are for a failed transfer, even with a surrogate that has been tested and deemed that she should not have any issues conceiving and carrying.
Wow. So
And so,
that's good to know too.
yeah,
Because
they don't really prepare you for that.
so many people ridicule what they don't understand. Like, that's
Right.
man-made, that's not of God. Like, and because I remember, I will say, I remember one time, and I was in a situation where I was like ministering or
Hmm.
to a group of people, and I remember saying that, like, freeze your eggs. And I remember a male around, like I said, I just ministered in New York a couple
Hmm.
of weeks ago, and it's like there's women sitting here who are single, and it's like, and that's okay. There's nothing wrong with it. I was single for a very long time, but there's other things that have to be taken into consideration,
Right.
and that's all I'm saying. Like, I just don't want people to sit around and it's like you're believing God for this life, this
Mhm.
picture that you have, and then you're not considering that other side, you
Right.
know. But anywho, so moving along, so I love that you said even with surrogacy, there's faith. And that's why, like, I
Mhm.
really, want to, when we talked about the journey and the gift of life, like surrogacy really is like a sacrifice, number one. But I
Mhm.
like the idea of surrogacy faith and the gift of carrying life, because faith is a part of it. And this
Huge.
just happens to be a testimony where you knew that you had heard from God. And like I said, before I ever met you, I knew the other side, and and I knew God had put me in their life
Yeah.
to minister to them. And so I was helping however I could, my husband and I. And then the Lord was like, had you coming
He
around
was
here,
working from every angle.
you know? And so it was just like, wow,
He was working.
how amazing is that? And so that's how I know, like, maybe to people who don't understand, it's just like, but if God wanted it, why didn't they just get pregnant the regular way? And it's like, and you have all these
Those are
questions.
people that don't understand that the Bible tells us about long suffering and what can be developed through long suffering.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. Coach T. So after your first experience though, what made you say I want to do this again?
I actually said I would do it twice from the very beginning.
Okay.
We
Well,
went
you
in,
did it 3 times.
I did it
so
3 times. Now
so what made
the
you
third
say
one,
after the second time, I'll do the
yeah.
third time?
So I initially agreed because that was the ask. That was the
Okay.
ask. Hey, would you consider helping us at least have 2 children? Sure. I said as long as everything goes well with the pregnancy and the delivery, because I'm a little older now than I was the last time I was pregnant. I'm in my 30s now. So as long as everything goes well, I'm good. Everything went well. Second journey, we had a hiccup in the beginning, got pregnant. We had a little rocky road because I had a condition called placenta previa, but I had a beautiful delivery. And I heard during that journey, I can tell you exactly when it happened, October 2022. I thought I was done because we had already started developing a few complications in that journey. So I was like, yeah, I'm probably going to be done after this one. They said 2, they're going to have 2 because the baby's going to be born, everything's going to be fine. Um, but in October, God told me then, you have to stay, don't leave them. I didn't even know if there was going to be another embryo or anything left over to even work with. But I said, okay.
Wow.
Okay.
And how did because, and I know your husband, and you're married to a man's man, okay? I
Yes.
mean, and the guy. He's
Yes.
very, so what was that like? Because I'm sure somebody would wonder, like, what do you say to your husband? Like, how do y'all, like,
I would say, for first of all, anybody considering surrogacy, if you are married,
mm-hmm,
please talk to your spouse, number one. And if you
mm-hmm.
are a believer, talk to God.
Yeah.
But my husband was completely on board from
Okay.
a decade ago
Okay.
because we're all still friends now. And
Okay.
so we knew this couple. He knew this
Okay.
couple and he was okay with me offering to help them. And so a couple of years down the line, when this comes up and I say, I gotta still do it. I have to still to see her become a mom, it did something to me on the inside. And I said, if it wasn't her, then it's gonna be somebody else. And the night I told him, I said, the adoption is finalized. She has their last name now. And he said, so what's next for you? I said,
Wow.
I gotta apply. I still gotta do it. He's been supportive since day one.
Wow.
He had my back. He attended all the appointments that he could. We had a couple of COVID babies, so you know how that was with having other people with you in person. But he attended all the appointments, everything that I needed to do legally, as well as any of the other steps and requirements through the surrogacy agency. He was
Mm-hmm.
right there with me during delivery and supportive 100% during postpartum when I needed him truly the most.
Mm-hmm. Wow, I think that is like phenomenal and just remarkable. So on, like, I guess, because, and I will say, you what I love about you is you don't play when it comes to self-care, honey. So
No.
you had the most luxurious pregnancies to me that I've ever seen. I was like, oh, you were like at the spa every other week. You were like at the chiropractor every other
Physical
week.
therapy.
You were doing physical therapy. You might have even been doing other aromatherapy. I know you were having your house clean. You were going on dates. You really, really, and I, even for me, I can say I did have a beautiful pregnancy as well. Thank God. It was so beautiful. Um, I got this book I need to tell everybody about. Gosh, what is the name of it? Jackie Mize. And Jackie Mize is the writer of the book, but she basically it's a spiritual book.
Mm.
She's a woman of God, and she talks about having children easy. And
Mm.
she goes from the Old Testament, where the Bible talked about the Hebrew women. Basically, it talked about how they had babies, like, they just popped them out, and it was
Knock
so
them
easy.
out.
Yeah, and it's a part of a promise, something you should be in faith for. All
Yeah.
because people talk so bad about pregnancy, and even me, I was considered older when I had my baby,
They called
and
me a
not even considered.
geriatric pregnancy.
Yeah, yeah, that's what they said. Like anything over 30, 35 or 32, which one is it?
35. Yeah.
Okay, is geriatric. And so for me, it was just like, wait a minute. But it was beautiful. It
Yeah.
was absolutely beautiful. And so but I was also in faith for that. I didn't have one day of morning sickness. But so you were you had a luxurious pregnancy, in my opinion. You've done it 3 times.
Yeah.
Now the other question on the flip side, monetary, because I feel like there's not a people, and in every episode I discuss, I love to get down to brass nickels, only
Mm.
because I feel like it's another part of what we don't know.
Right.
Like even with the IVF process, people don't know that, and I know you and I've talked about it. Like Starbucks has some very good benefits,
Mhm.
even if they pay for IVF.
Yes.
Lowe's for men
Yes.
has very good benefits where your wife or girlfriend can get pregnant. I don't know, what the name of the insurance policy is, but there's certain places that have this certain
Like
type of
carrot.
insurance, and they pay for IVF. So if you
Mhm.
do, if it is something you're considering, and then also there's bundle, like different packages. So like,
Mhm.
let's say you don't have all the money at once, but you have good credit, you have whatever, or even a family member can
Mhm.
get a bundle package for you to go through IVF. So there's
Mhm.
different ways if you don't actually have the finances. But like I said, you carried really great. Can you tell us from a compensation aspect? And I know that there was a lot that you did not take advantage of, and
Yeah.
that was just your own heart and just the person you are. But on a low end, between now and even the best of times versus now, what would be the lowest and the highest range for compensation for a surrogate?
I would say based on like a national average between, different agencies, the low end would run you maybe about 40 to 45,000. The high end would run you somewhere between 90 and 100,000.
Okay, and is that at the best of times, or was there a time when it was more? Because I had researched it was more. What I had looked up, it was like like almost 170. So is that like
Yeah,
other
so
things, or
I think with that, that's probably including some fees and then other agency stuff, but just the compensation itself is probably about 100,000.
okay? So each time a potential surrogate carries a child for another family, on the low end, 45,000. On the high, or more, I guess whatever the range is, 190 to 100,000.
Yeah.
Agency versus non.
Mhm.
When you go with non-agency, which I know is really risque, is the compensation the same?
It can be. Yeah,
Okay.
it can
Is
be
it
because
generally, would it be more or less?
it would.
Is it like, I don't know.
I would say the compensation, if you don't use an agency, it may possibly be less, but it just
Oh,
depends on the attorneys for the surrogate and the intended parents. It also depends on who's helping coordinate that, whether it's just an individual conversation or sometimes the fertility clinics will have a coordinator that can kind of help guide that process. And you'll use certain kinds of templates and things like that. But people tend to use a national average. So I would say it's probably about the same, whether you use an agency or not.
yeah, I have so many more questions. I'm like, oh, okay. I'm gonna try to rush through. So, um, how did you feel emotionally processing or carrying a baby that isn't yours? Like, because I mean, I knew my son, and you had two sons already. Like, you talk with them, you know. My son, I knew he was funny in my stomach. He would do things, I'm serious. Like, he would do things and we'd be giggling. And I knew he was funny. I knew it was a boy, but I knew he was a boy. I knew he was funny, and I even knew how he was gonna look. So I know you developed these relationships with these beautiful babies who we all love. Like,
Yes,
what is that like? And I know the difference for you though is you are like family.
I am.
So you still have a relationship. You still come in
I
trips.
call
You're
them
at
my
birthday parties.
munchkins.
You're most people aren't like that though. So like,
Yeah.
I know after you realize later that developed, but like, how do you process at the time? Like, okay, like, do you go through postpartum like a regular, carrier or mom?
I would say in the beginning, I was very intentional about trying to make sure that I reminded myself this is you. I mean, you go into it knowing this is someone else's
Because
child.
you do have to have psychological
You do have a
examinations,
psychological
etc. So
evaluation.
don't
Yes,
think that like everybody understand there is a process to do
uh,
this. This
an
is not
experience.
just willy nilly. But go ahead.
So you it was a reminder like, hey, this isn't my child, but I want to make
Okay.
sure that he's well taken care of. You do develop a relationship with them, though. You learn their little habits, their little wake and sleep cycles, and their dislikes. I remember texting them saying, hey, he does not like when I drink cold water. He does not like when I drive in the car and the sun is shining through the front windshield onto my belly. That bright light, it makes him kick aggressively. He loves when I play music. He loves when I take a bath. I remember telling them all of this.
Wow.
So, and or certain times that he would wake up in the middle of the night, and then now Earthside, he would still get up at that same time in the wee hours of the morning. So, I mean, you do kind of develop that relationship, but I would say in that second and that third journey, because the relationship was so much more close between us now as adults, that I really didn't, I wasn't as intentional about not trying to have that form of a bond with the kids because now I know that once I deliver them, they're safe and sound with their parents, but I still have a very close relationship with them.
Let me
So
ask you this. Was it harder or easier to let go after birth than people imagined? Or people would imagine? Like, how did that look?
I don't know too many surrogates that struggle with it, honestly.
Same way we have the skin to skin bond, you also do that and share pass that the baby on to the intended parents for
Yes.
them to begin to bond. And
Mhm.
then one more thing I want to point out, as you're going to continue your answer, is that I love how you told me about they would record books and they would read the books and
Yeah.
she would play their voice on her tummy. And if they have siblings, the same thing. So that
Mhm.
even though the baby wasn't constantly hearing them talk, the baby was still familiar with their intended parent's voice. So
Mhm.
there's other things that you can do if that's a concern. Okay, back to what we were saying. You said you don't know a lot of surrogates who experience that.
Yeah, I don't know a lot of surrogates that really struggle with the whole separation because the whole point of going into it is to to give this gift.
Yeah.
And the highlight of each of my journeys was delivery.
Oh,
Seeing
yeah.
them with their child is the highlight of each. And so, even though you've just had a child, you've just gone through a lot. Because I had two vaginal deliveries, one C-section. So you've just gone through a lot. But the moment that that baby is out and crying and now in their arms, it just does something to you on the inside.
Mhm.
I cried every single time. So
Wow.
it's this that part of the separation is not hard because that's what you go into it for is to see that child with their parents.
Wow. I love that. And I mean, what would you tell okay, before I ask what would you tell someone who's thinking about becoming a surrogate,
Mhm.
is there a surrogate shortage?
Um,
Is that a thing?
to hear the industry say it, yes, but I don't really
So
believe
the
that.
industry says yes. Okay.
The
Now, but
industry says yes.
now I know, like with some things like adoption parents, even though, it depends on, your race or whatever. Is it race? Is that why it's like a case by case, or like maybe there's not enough African American women who are becoming surrogates? Like, or is it like, what are they saying?
I
And
would
they,
definitely say, as an African American woman, we are a minority in surrogacy. We really
okay.
I
Okay.
also feel like that even though we are out there and we are doing good things in surrogacy, that we aren't always displayed. We aren't always
Like on
used
their agency
for
websites and stuff.
publications and things like that.
Okay.
We're not always the ones that they're doing the storytelling, because that's how you are able to advertise things, is through storytelling.
Hmm.
We're not always the face of the stories, even though we're out there doing good things. And so if you
Okay.
don't see anyone that looks like you, then you may think that's not something we do.
Yeah, exactly. That's why I wanted to ask you this. So, for someone who is thinking about becoming a surrogate, what would you say to them?
I would say do your research.
Okay.
Do your research. There are a lot of good agencies, there are a lot of mediocre agencies, and there's so many different packages. Um,
Okay.
so do your research.
And let me ask you this. If someone wanted to reach out to you, where can you be found at if they want to ask questions or, or find out more? Is that something that you would be open and willing to do? And if so, how can they find you?
Oh, yeah. So you can definitely find me on Instagram first
Mhm.
at coaching um, with T Wells. So coaching T.Wells. You can also find me on my website, coachingwithtwells.com. Just
Oh,
straight. Yep. So
okay.
those are the two best ways to find me, is either on my website or on Instagram.
Okay. And then I have another question, a few more. How would you sum up your entire surrogacy experience in one word?
Marvel.
Ah,
I would say
Marvel.
I would say Marvel.
Mhm.
And the reason why is because it was a wonder. It
Mm,
was something that literally was, there were moments in there that I know were supernatural. There
wow,
were times where I knew that this is all happening because of nothing but God.
that's
That
great.
I had to trust him with my life,
Yes,
with my body. I had
yes.
to give up complete control and just trust him. And he
Wow.
carried me through all three of those journeys for 5.5 years.
As you were carrying those babies.
Yes, I
That,
was
and
a
that's
vessel.
and that's what I love about that the poem that it talked about it's the body becoming both a cradle and a bridge.
Yeah.
And bringing that beautiful baby earthside because again, he said before, he formed you, so
Yeah,
with all the great science, I always like to say he's the God of science.
that's
He's
right.
the God of heaven and earth. And I just the options to me are so important. And I think that it's enriching,
Mhm.
overall, when you begin to look at what options there are for someone who may be experiencing medical or health issues, or maybe age is a factor, or maybe there are challenges genetically. There's
Mhm.
other options, and we've got to start talking about them. It's
We
a new
do.
day and age. And so I really had so much more. Oh, one more
Yes.
thing. You had two boys.
I had twins.
How does, I mean, yes, you have, and you had two boys at the time of your own. How did they view this whole process with mom? I know your husband was on board, but I need to ask this for someone else wondering, how did your kids take this? What was their
So
viewpoint?
my oldest son initially thought it was pretty cool, but he was already at that preteen stage, so he honestly could care less as long as the baby wasn't coming to our house. He could care less. My youngest son is all about me. He is a nurturer, and so
Mhm.
he was right by my side When I
Mm-hmm.
first started the journey, he was 7 years old, and he wanted to know how I was feeling, how I was doing. I mean, he's going to make a phenomenal husband one day. So he was
Yeah.
all about me, and he's my little travel partner. So anytime I was going to visit the family, he always wanted to go, and he still does that now. And so he has experienced more of the journey because he's my little sidekick. He is a true boy.
Okay.
But my boys have been very supportive.
And they are
For,
so handsome.
thank you. I would say for both of them, as long as we weren't bringing any new babies, they were okay with it.
Yeah, that is amazing. But like I said, this was, I mean, thinking about vessels of hope and I mean, yeah, vessels of hope. The other scripture that stood out to me was he said, you have this treasure in an earthen vessel. And I
Mhm.
thought about that too, because, that's really what we are here for, to glorify God in our bodies.
In all
And
things.
and he talks about as a living sacrifice. And so, and I'm not saying that this is for everybody, because I can certainly say that I have not received the call to become a surrogate, you know but it's a blessing to know that should I have needed that or need that option is out there.
Yeah.
And I think me and you talked about this quote that we saw someone write, which I loved, and it said something about it didn't say about your ship. What's that statement about if your ship didn't come in, nobody said
Go out and get it.
you couldn't swim
Yeah, you
to
have
it.
to go out and get it.
You
Yeah, you got
know?
to swim to
And
it.
so
Yes.
that is like so cool to me. If your
Yeah.
ship doesn't come in, nobody said you couldn't swim out to it. So I thought that was cute. But I thank God for you and this I don't want to say message, but just this information about surrogacy, because I think that so many women will be blessed just to, even they may have a friend. Somebody's probably listening for their friend or their family member. What if they have a daughter? People have different things, lupus and all kinds of diseases that, but they have everything else. But it could just be you know, a burden on their own body,
Right.
and yes, we believe for healing, but I also believe, and while you're waiting for that, expecting that, there are things that you can do. And so this
Mhm.
is about majestic motherhood, and we are exploring that motherhood journey and all of its different facets. And to
Right.
me, you are the ultimate majestic mom.
Aw.
I love you. I thank God for your friendship, your information, your humor, and I just hope that you come back another time to join us. Until then, guys, you know where you can reach her at. She's already shared. We're going to put it in our spotlight, and you can like and subscribe. I get so much great feedback, but you guys, you got to go like and subscribe, and you can follow us on Majestic Motherhood on Instagram and just Majestic Motherhood on YouTube. Until then, God bless you. We'll see you next time.